Welcome back to PlayStation Live from E3. I'm joined by Ryan Clements, Pete from Bethesda, and John from Tango, and we are here to talk about The Evil Within 2.
Nice.
Yay, more scary game. Okay, so Sebastian is back, so give us a little bit of a summary of what people can expect in this game.
I mean, The Evil Within 2 starts not long after the events of the first game, and it's basically Sebastian at rock bottom. Since the events of the first game, his life has kind of completely fallen apart. Nobody really believes him and what he says took place in the asylum. He's become an alcoholic, and he's basically at the bottom of the barrel.
So if it wasn't bad enough that he had to go through everything in the first one, now it's like, how can we make it worse?
Yeah, it's definitely worse. And that's really where you find Sebastian when Kidman, his old partner from the first game, comes back and says, the daughter that you thought was dead, that you had lost years ago, isn't dead. Mobius has her, they're using her, and you need to go in and find her and get her. And it's a redemption story. It's a chance for him to kind of pick himself up and use finding her to like start to rebuild his life and put himself back together.
It's a lot of lighthearted material.
Ryan, it's not that bad.
You know, your standard go into a kind of quasi-virtual reality to find the daughter you thought was dead story. You know, lighthearted, nice, few chuckles. It'll be great.
Nice family-friendly material. What are some of the lessons you guys and Tango learned from the first Evil Within that you feel like you're bringing in with the sequel?
Well, one of the things we saw was we definitely wanted to have a game that focused more on characters, more on story. And we put a lot of effort this time. Sebastian is coming back. He's a much more relatable character, and you get to really journey with him from the beginning of the game to the end and see his evolution as a character. And like Pete said, it's a redemption story, so you really get the quality out of there. Yeah.
I think it's a big one, which is in the first game, Sebastian's kind of a jerk, and his whole motivation is he shows up and the police get called to this thing, and he's a detective, but there's no pull or like sort of relatable moments where you kind of empathize with him. It's like it sucks for you and it sucks for him because you're both getting scared and both trying not to die. Whereas this time around, because you see him so kind of broken down by what happened in the first game, and you sort of understand the connection between a father and his daughter and that motivation, I think he's much more relatable.
Yeah, and he has that drive this time to go further. Yeah.
Like he knows what he's doing this for.
The stakes are a lot higher this time around.
Absolutely,
so this game, from what I've seen, feels a little more like a psychological horror than just, you know, scary and gory and jump scares. Seems a lot more psychological.
For sure. I mean, John could probably speak to it, but it's always a blend.
Yeah, there's definitely jump scares in there. There will be more, but like you said, I think especially what you see in the trailer and what you see in the gameplay, there is that psychological element that we sort of brought up a little bit in this one, and players will definitely see that when they play it.
Yeah, like don't get the wrong idea. It's not like, not that there's anything wrong with Saw, but it's not like Saw the video game. It's not just nonstop blood and dismemberment and guts. Turns out there's a lot of ways to scare people and make it off-putting. And I think that's one of the interesting things about the game is, like, if you don't like being scared at all, well, there's no chance you should play The Evil Within 2 because you definitely will get scared.
Thanks.
We're just going to talk through it.
Exactly.
But you don't actually have to like survival horror or be a survival horror fan to like this kind of game, because I think of the stuff that John's talked about, the team has really tried to focus on it. It really actually started with the DLC for the original Evil Within, where they did some things with the Kidman DLC, the story and the narrative there that people really took to, and I think they kind of used that as a launching pad for this one. So, you know, if you like action games or good story, and yeah, sure, it's going to be scary and there's going to be tense combat, but you don't have to be, well, if you don't love survival horror, this game isn't for you. Although obviously that is the big audience that I think this will appeal to. If you like Shinji's work, if you like Tango's work, this is going to be right in your wheelhouse.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, and one of those is, you know, the kind of mantra of survival horror, and that is the foundation, is the core of what The Evil Within is all about. And, you know, with the sequel, survival horror is known for a lot of things. I often think about, when I hear survival horror, I think about like resources, item management, you know, trying to get from one moment to the next and being smart about it when you're also scared out of your mind. How do you guys balance all those disparate elements together in The Evil Within 2? And
well, it just takes a lot of time.
Time is everything.
Balance is everything in a survival horror game, right? Because like you said, it's resource management, which is such a key element to playing through this game. And in this one, that remains. You know, we didn't sacrifice that for sort of going through these big action pieces. It really is about exploring this world and finding anything that you can find and take, craft together to make it to the next area, to make it to the next step. And you know, it's tough. Yeah.
What kind of
weapons? I think the other thing that John and the team really focus on is that notion that a survival horror game can't just be terrifying nonstop, right? Like you put a player into that kind of environment, like after 2 hours, you're just desensitized to all of it. Like, yeah, okay, something just like it's all horrifying, it's all terrible, like whatever, I'm scared. But I think what Tango does really well is not only figuring out that balance of resources, but that balance of intensity. Like it turns out if you give the player time to breathe or to get a little story or to talk to somebody about a side mission, you're actually setting up the game that much better so that those scary moments can be scary. And I think that's a skill that these guys have that you don't really appreciate until you play it. And it's not even a survival horror thing, but I think it's even more important in survival horror than a lot of other.
Absolutely. You give the player a minute to think like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be just fine. And then, it comes right back at you.
It's so not okay.
Yeah, so not
blood
okay.
pressure just shoots
I
up.
love the weapons that are always available and the different things that you can kill the scary monsters with. Will we see a lot more of that in the second one?
Yeah, so obviously your standard, your shotgun, your handgun are back in full force, and you can see in our gameplay trailer that there is the crossbow from the original game returning. So it gives you an opportunity to sort of use that as a tactical weapon to take down enemies. But even the sneak aspect is in there, so you don't have to use guns to take down enemies. You can hide, you can sneak kill, take them out in one shot from behind. So there's lots of options available to you, especially to suit the playstyle that you like to play. Yeah.
Good, there's stealth options. So that
Good, so you can just hide.
That makes me feel a little bit better. As the hiding scaredy cat, I'm glad you're catering.
You can hide.
Hiding scaredy cat mode is available.
Okay, it's like normal, hard, but then if you go all the way to the top, it's hiding scaredy cat.
Yeah.
I know you guys probably get asked this a lot, but you know, I feel like there's a lot of cyclical elements to how the East and West do horror and how they kind of have learned from each other over time. I mean, with The Evil Within 2, it has sort of a Western feel, but it's deeply driven by sort of an Eastern and Japanese horror aesthetic. I mean, what is the direction like this time around? Is it following that path? Do you feel like there's more Western influences as well?
Well, we never set out from the beginning and say, hey, let's make like a Western-themed horror game. I think it's because the team is obviously mostly Japanese. There is that sense of the Japanese horror in there, and I think that really comes out with the enemy design.
Absolutely, no, absolutely.
But some of the locations, we did get a lot of inspiration from some Western-themed places. Like the stage itself is a kind of American town, compared to the first game, which kind of had a maybe European influence.
Right.
This time we went in a little bit in that direction, but there are some things that we haven't shown which go into a completely different direction, which I'm sure
Great.
you're
More crazy horror that I can't stand.
Yeah. Well, and how do you guys come up with new ways to scare people over and over? You know, because you know it's a sequel. We've already kind of seen like, oh no, he's going to jump out of here or there. So how do you guys, you know, brainstorm and come up with new ways to scare the pants off us?
Maybe the most fun part of working with Tango on the Evil Within, and then now the Evil Within 2 is like team meetings where they're like, you know, like every dev that we meet with, the end of it is usually like, hey, we're going to show you some art or some screenshots or some concepts. And whenever we get to the creature stuff, the US end of that call is always like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Like, who comes up with that? Like, what kind of nightmares are you having?
Who are you?
Yeah, it's unbelievable that like just
we're happy with that. But
that they just never tap the well completely dry. That there's always some god-awful monstrosity that somebody has come up with that is going to be shambling at you, running at you, screaming at you, whatever it is.
There's always something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Why do you feel like horror just resonates with so many people? And of course, as this game and Bethesda indicates, it's cross-cultural, right? It's just like completely universal. There's something almost addictive about it.
I don't know. I grew up watching horror movies. Like, I grew up on survival horror as a genre. So it was a weird feeling for me because you never wanted to play, but you wanted to play because you knew you were going to get scared. And there's that thrill of that. It's that fear of dying. Even though it is a game, it's like you really attach to the character and your progression. So it's, that intrinsic feeling of there's risk, but not really.
It certainly is a genre that lends itself to like that little bit of an adrenaline rush almost, right? And one of the things that I think that you know I found a lot of in the Evil Within was how thrilling it can be and how tense it can be to run away. Like, when you have something that's chasing you and, like, I'm not going to shoot it. There's no weak points for me to take out. I don't have, like, some big chain gun to kill this. I just have to run away and not die. And you get to the end of that hallway, or you get away from that thing. You go crashing through a door, and you realize, like, oh, my God, I didn't die. Like, that was intense. And all you actually did was run away. Like, you didn't actually, like, damage it, do anything to it, outsmart it. You just ran. But, like, when you finish that moment, you have this, your pulse is going and your heart's beating like, wow, that was intense. Like, holy cow, and it's almost like a little bit of a drug. You're like, all right, okay. All right, I think I'm ready to do it again. And you get that feeling again, and sort of pacing those out, I think, is to John's point. Like, that's what's fun about horror in general, and with video games in specific, is that, like, doing very little can be such an intense experience and give you a feeling that you can't necessarily get in a shooter or an RPG or in other things the same way.
Yeah, like in a game like this, probably the scariest thing is just like a closed door.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's there, and you know you have to go in there, and you know probably something bad is waiting, but you don't know. But that anticipation there is that thrill, that adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and you know, John was talking about, like, the time that they need to iterate and to work on stuff. I will tell you, the thing they need no practice on is the speed with which Sebastian opens a door. Like, they have found the most unsettling formula for the speed at which it opens and the crack, and every single time it's like, oh no. You have that sort of, like, at the movies, right? Like, don't go in the door, get out of the house, what are you doing? Like, the way they have Sebastian open doors, and, like, it hasn't really changed since the first game. It's the most unsettling speed and camera perspective I've ever seen in a game.
At this point, he should just you know, just take it right down.
Yeah.
I have a quick suggestion before we close up the segment, okay? At some point, you should just disable the pause feature in the game during a big scare moment, and that way the person can't hide behind a pause menu.
That's a good idea.
So you can take that right back to the studio. That's free. You can take it. And
don't do that to the normal mode.
Okay, yeah.
You're like super difficult to figure it out, but I
no
need
pausing,
pause, John.
nothing.
You know this.
Nothing's in there, yeah.
No, I think it's so great. I think we all play, you know, video games for the interactivity of it, and there's such a visceral response that you get from horror. And, you know, when your heart starts to race and you actually have the reaction to that game, and you guys do that so well. So thank you so much for coming and sharing Evil Within 2.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Really awesome. All right, guys, Evil Within 2, definitely stay tuned to the PlayStation blog. We'll have a lot more about that coming out. It's October 13th, right? Is that what we're saying?
Friday the 13th of October.
Friday the 13th. Yes.
It's
awesome.
like you planned that one out.
It turned out pretty well.
Perfect. All right, well, stick around. We've got a lot more from PlayStation live at E3.
PlayStation